Hi, welcome back to the Mom Mentality Show. My name is Austin Chadwick and co-host is Chris Lucian. And today we're excited to have Nazee Hajebi on the show to talk about some exciting topics, including a story of how she helped the team start mobbing and obstacles she's encountered while doing so as a less technical coach and some tips on that subject. So some great stuff. But before we jump into that, Nazee, do you mind introducing yourself?
Sure. Thanks, Austin. Good afternoon or good morning, depending on where everyone is. But I am Nazee Hajebi. I started my career as a software engineer, and I programmed in C and C++, Oracle, SQL. I'm not going to give you guys the version of that because you can guess my age, but it was a long time ago. And right now I am an agile coach, and I help the teams to get better. And my passion is mob programming, thanks to being introduced to Hunter Industry and Chris Lucian.
Appreciate that. All right.
So that is the truth.
Nice. Well, I guess maybe jump in with a story you have to share on the helping someone get started with mobbing.
Yeah, sure. Again, I was a programmer, but disclaimer, I haven't programmed for a long time. So like you said, I like to share one of the stories I have. I attended one meetup group in Santa Barbara, and Hunter Industry was there. That is how the whole thing started for me. And I observed mobbing, and they asked me to participate. So I'm like, I'm a less technical coach, I can't. They are like, no, come by. So after that meeting, I really wanted to introduce this to my team. And I went back to work and I told the team, like, guys, I am so interested. I saw mob or group, I call it group programming also. I saw mob and group programming. I really want us to try. So I have a very good relationship with my team. So I was expecting some kind of argument or discussion. Nobody said anything and everybody had their heads down. I'm like, what happened? And our software engineering manager was in the room, and he immediately said, let's move on. So I had an obstacle, so let me introduce Kevin to you guys. So Kevin is a bully, a person who's hard to please, has been in the company since inception, and has a military background. So afterwards, I had to talk to the team, and individually I talked to them. I'm like, what happened? You guys didn't say a word to me. So basically they said, we don't want to be judged by Kevin, and we don't want to, make him upset. I messed up once and he literally chewed me up and all of this. So I knew that I started to see what can I do that at least my team tries once or twice. So what I did is basically gave different things, options, or all was unsuccessful until I told in one of our meetings, attendance is optional. And if you attend, you can be an observer or participant. Again, before I finished my sentence, Kevin said, good, I'm not attending. I'm like, okay. So afterwards, the team individually reached out to me. They are like, okay, you have so much passion to this. We will give you a chance to try it. So I had a meeting with, I asked them, let's try twice before, saying that you don't want to try ever again. So we had our first session, and we were all so excited. But what happened, each person was in a different environment. And we chose the most difficult thing that nobody could explain what the problem is. Forget about explaining the solution. So what happened was a total disaster. and I blamed myself because during the retro at the end, the team was disappointed. And I blamed myself that if I was a technical person, I could have helped them get unstuck. And because I'm not technical, I couldn't do that. So I got lucky. I made an agreement that we have to try twice before they tell me that they don't want to do it or not. So what happened, I started to talk to the teams, different people in the company. So finally, I met a person, tech lead called Scott. I told him what happened, and it was a disaster, and I have one more chance. And we both agreed that the same way Hunter Industry during the meetup, they did a sample game, we will start with a sample game, and instead of attacking, working on something complicated. So basically what we did, and I got lucky. Scott told me he's gonna attend my mobbing. So I was excited, and Scott and we both get passionate. Like when we learn something new, we want to share with everybody in the company. So I was excited he's gonna join me. So we had our second session, and we worked on a game. And whenever we got stuck, I had Scott helping me throughout the process and unstuck the team. And at the end of the retrospective, the team decided to continue with, with doing mobbing. And that's how our journey started. I want to say something again for less technical people. There's a few things. Make sure that you make optional the attendance and participation. Make sure, because you want to create a positive space. Make sure you have tons of technical allies to help you. And they don't have to be part of the team. They can be outside. If it is part of the team, it's great. And start simple. Be creative and do not give up. You can have your team do mobbing. At least try it and see if they want to do it or not.
Yeah, I think your story reminds me a little bit of just kind of being on the fluent edge and not being overwhelmed, right? And so I think I've seen the same sort of thing where, if people don't know how to mob, and especially if they haven't had any pair programming experience either, then they're learning just to verbalize code, right? And or take verbal instruction and type the code rather than thinking about the code and typing it. And so all of these are new skills. And so I think what I find often is that you need a problem so simple that each person could solve it on their own with no issue, because it's just practicing the mechanics of, I'm going to talk about iterating over a list, or I'm going to talk about evaluating the modulus of a number or something. And so I think that to me is like the concept of the fluent edge, and keeping learners engaged in what they're trying to do. And so I really appreciate the valuable lessons that kind of came out from that. So.
And I also, based on those experiences, I have a criteria for the team that I work with. If we need to work in a problem within the, whatever we are working on, the criteria is one person can finish it in 1 hour without anybody's help. If we have that, and if we meet, then we can work on the problem, related to the work.
Okay.
That's my criteria.
Yeah. And I think I've definitely seen what you're talking about there with the start simple, and like what you said, Chris, with the fluent edge. And I think if I were to host a group of people I didn't know to try out mobbing, that's absolutely how it'd start. I've also seen this other pattern, and I can't figure it out, so maybe you guys can help me. Is we're in a meeting and it's a really hard, complex problem, and you kind of just start naturally mobbing, and the complexity and difficulty of the problem is the driver for them to start mobbing, even though they don't know they're mobbing. And they weren't mob practitioners before. I've seen this happen quite a bit when we interact with other teams. Like we recently did one where we had to do some kind of migration and no one had the knowledge in their head. So it's kind of the opposite of almost what Chris said. It was like no one person could solve it. And just the light bulb started going off as people were sharing information. And it was almost a win for mobbing. But I'm trying to understand, like, why did that work, even though it's kind of like the opposite of simple? I don't know. Did either of you have thoughts there?
I think so at least from my observation, is if the people, and I don't know, this is a question for you, Austin, have people done mobbing? So are they familiar with mobbing that you did this integration with?
No. Yeah.
That is, yeah.
Well, I think it's collaboration skills, right? So I think because you're saying that these people were not necessarily programmers coming in, right? In that
yeah, not necessarily. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think it's, you know, it's like verbalization of intent. I think that many programmers that have never worked in a pair before or in a mob before have never taken the time to think about a problem and then say what to type. Because when I'm programming by myself, I might have an abstract thought about how I might organize the code, and I will write that as code. I don't say it out loud in my head. And to verbalize it, and the intention of that is a completely different skill, I think. And so I think that programmers have, you know, in more traditionally, you know, especially if you like did a traditional comp sci degree, you're taught to kind of think abstractly in your head and then make that into code. It doesn't necessarily go into your language that you speak in your head. And so I think often you'll find a lot of programmers that have a hard time mobbing for the first time because they are not used to verbally communicating logic all the time. Where I do think that in other disciplines you'll see that more often. Like I think most business classes, you know, like people that take MBAs, you will see what look like mobbing stations in their classrooms because they have a big screen TV with 5 chairs around it, and they're just hashing out an idea and then entering everything in Excel. So I think depending on what area of the business they come from, or what their background is, verbalizing the problem may be easier or harder depending. And so when you take a group of programmers that are used to working in silence, and then now you're saying you have to deal with all the noise, you have to deal with verbalizing your intent, and you have to deal with listening for that intent and translating that into code. Those are all new skills that they don't do normally. And so I think if I were to venture a guess, I would just say that the people that you had there at that time had those particular skills a little bit more developed than I think what we see. Because I've seen what Nazee is saying about joining a group of developers that have never done mobbing before, and they were very uncomfortable, and adding a very complex problem on top of that. What they want to do is think about it for a while and then type it out without ever translating it into English, right? And so that's where I would guess the disconnect is. And that's the fluent edge concept, right? So if they've developed the skill to verbalize that logic, then the problem can be harder, right?
I also want to add this to what Chris said. So I tell the team, you need to speak in English. We need to say intent in English. So they literally say the program, like, you know, oh, add variable this. And I'm like, no, it is English. And they get agitated. They are like, this is English. And I'm like, yes, I know it is English, but you need to say it in a simple word as if we are talking about what do we want to do, and don't go through the programming. Just adjusting to that, it is very hard And also, as a less technical coach, there is a selfishness in there for me also, because when they say it in English, I can follow it, and the junior people or the people that they are not as technical as other people that they are in that meeting, they can understand, and we are all in sync, and there is no assumptions, and it makes it easy. And I also want to say one more thing regarding Chris said about collaboration. I was surprised that I was doing end of life for some of our products. I did a pairing and mobbing with our technical writers. They loved it so much. They asked me to do a presentation, and they started to do mobbing with the technical writers when they are starting in, or they are exchanging and working on something new. So.
Awesome. Yeah. Mobbing on almost anything has a lot of benefits, especially if it requires something hard like that. Like tech writing is not easy. And I want to jump to something you said about say it in English first. And I think to a developer, I guess one way to translate that is maybe speak in domain first. So how like someone who's not a programmer would say it first, right? And I think on this topic of a less technical coach being in a mob, that is, I think, a really important skill, a really important facet to bring to a mob, because often a lot of problems I've seen with software is that translation to how it matters to a regular non-technical person, to the domain, doesn't happen. So that kind of verbiage doesn't end up in the product code or the test code, and also it helps everyone get on alignment on like, hey, what's the business problem we're solving? We're not just writing code for code's sake. You know what I mean? Like, what is the purpose of this variable, right? And so when you start at that high level and get everyone in sync, it also increases the chances of that getting into the code, which will capture that knowledge. But also people aren't talking past each other because, they're solving different business problems or something. So I think that's a good way to put it. And one follow-up question I had was, you said the second time you tried mobbing, you did a game. What game was it? What came to mind to me was the mob programming RPG, or was it something else?
No, I used FizzBuzz.
Oh, FizzBuzz. Okay.
FizzBuzz, yeah.
Okay, gotcha. Yes. So yeah, that's exactly like what Chris was saying. Yeah, the simplest, like FizzBuzz is like one of the simplest things you could possibly do. So
developers, they don't know it, but it's kind of like a puzzle-y, because I don't give them information. And also, as we are solving, it becomes a little bit challenging, not from programming, from the understanding, like what's the next step or what's going to happen. So it's kind of fun.
Yeah. And another follow-up question I had, and it might get into the example I brought up earlier, was you said one of your tips, so it was start simple, and then what was it? It was like something like make sure you have someone who can solve problems in there or something. Do you mind restating that one?
No, definitely. As a less technical coach, that's a very important thing. We need to have technical allies. That we are, basically what we are doing, why does the team need a facilitator? Not at Hunter Industry, but other companies, because we need to hold the space. We need to make sure that we have agreements regarding kindness, consideration, and respect for ourselves, for each other, and also to the code. Like whoever wrote that code, because I have seen that happen a lot, they make fun of that code and the developers. I'm like, whoever wrote that code, they wrote it at the best of their knowledge at that time, and with all the restrictions from time and budget and everything. And we are there to ensure that they don't go off track. And we are helping the team to increase their emotional intelligence within the group. So as a facilitator, we have to be an observer to see is there anybody anxious or what's going on in there. So that would very much help it. So these are the benefits we are bringing to the group. But we are not technical. So we need to have an ally. It would be amazing if it is within the team. And how I do it, before I introduce mobbing to the team, I do one-on-one conversation with the team's members. And I ask them and I say, have you done praying? Are you interested in mobbing? And I educate them. So I find allies there or outside, so that they are like, senior technical, lead or technical leads or senior developers, so that when we get stuck, they are there to help me to unstuck the team. And so I have an ally. I'm not worried about getting stuck in technically.
Maybe reducing technical friction when you're trying to introduce the new skill, right?
And not get stuck, and the team getting disappointed, especially in the beginning. Later on, it's okay because they are used to it and they are okay. But in the beginning, it's very important. And it gives me confidence.
Yeah.
That, I don't disappoint my team.
Yeah. And I think that might help, at least in my mind, solve the kind of dilemma we brought up earlier, like, should you have a hard problem or not? And I think like we've learned from others is that like any session, meeting, or kata has a deliberate purpose, right? So if your deliberate purpose is to learn to mob and everyone's coming into it with that, I think simple is the answer, right?
Yeah.
I think the deliberate purpose of the situation I was bringing up was people weren't showing up to mob, they were showing up to solve a problem, right? And mobbing is just something that they naturally did to solve the problem, right? But one thing both those scenarios have in common is that everyone who is needed is there, right? So if the problem is very difficult, you need the right people in the room to solve it. And if you keep it simple, the chances of that anyone can solve it is good, if you're trying to learn to mob. But if you are doing the other pattern, I suppose making sure that the whole system is there, so it's not like you said, I think having that tech ally is important, right? So to have a collaboration session that might turn into mobbing is very dangerous if the people in the meeting, in the collaboration session, can't solve the problem or they don't have the skill sets, right? And so, yeah, I think you really reduce your risk by doing both things you said. Keep it simple and then have the technical ally to show the benefits. So okay, cool. So what are some other things that you've coached from a less technical perspective as you're with a mob?
I'm sorry, ask me the question again.
Sure. Yeah. So I noticed you started to talk about like coaching, kind of like the prime directive with respect for, the code and things like that. Is there any other things that you've noticed that it gives you a unique angle when you're in a mob to help coach or help the mob that's different than, let's say, someone contributing code navigation?
Yeah. So I am going to give you a very quick example. Like, how I said regarding people being anxious. So I had one person who was anxious, and it got to her turn, and our environment was, she wasn't familiar with that environment. As she was typing, 5-6 people yelled at her, Control FD or whatever, and she got more anxious.
Yeah.
So at the end of our mobbing, when we were doing retrospective, she just looked at, I asked the team, do you want to do mobbing? And they said, yes, let's try it. But she looked at me and said, Nazee, we wasted 75 minutes. Why do you want to waste time again? So what I did, I told her, it took me some time, but anyway, I told her that, attendance is optional and you can be an observer. So she participated it. She didn't participate, but was an observer. But I wanted her to participate and to be learning from the team. So I came up with an idea. I thought, I am going to participate. And I'm going to make the team to make fun of me because I don't know the commands and everything, to make her feel comfortable. So I participated in mob as I was facilitating. And when it got to my turn, guess what happened? They yelled at me also, Control FD. And I'm like, okay, we have one navigator. I don't need 6 people yelling at me. after that I did twice rotation, and and I didn't know what to do. So this person told me, I want to participate. They participated in the session because I made them feel comfortable that they are not, they are not the only one who has, who didn't hear or got anxious. And at the end of the retro, she said, if you were mobbing like this, I would have attended all the previous sessions. I mean, I would have participated in other previous sessions. So as a less technical coach, because we have some coaching and we are observer, we can monitor to see what can we do to make it easier for people. And I think that's one of the values we bring in.
Yeah, that's that is actually a great advantage, because I too have seen that demonstrating vulnerability by you being the person who doesn't know is always a great move. But sometimes if you're working in something you're completely familiar with, you can't fake that, right? You can't like fake the vulnerability. So I just, I'm always looking for like, okay, what's something on the screen I don't know, and then make myself be that person who doesn't know a thing, so people can see it's okay to not know how to do a thing. But I think you're right. As a non-technical person, it's easier to find that, I suppose, and so to demonstrate that. So that is an asset for sure. Cool. So I guess one question I have is, when you facilitate, is this something you do a lot, or is it more you just kind of help jumpstart mobs as a non-technical coach, and then they kind of mob and they're on their own? Or is it something you participate in quite a bit continuously with them?
So again, like I participate with them originally until they feel comfortable. And then team members come and volunteer and say, oh, if you miss it, it's okay. We can, I can facilitate. And I'm like, oh, fantastic. One criteria I have for them, or as, I don't know as a, technical people, they do that or not. But one of my criteria is that we do 90 minutes. And the last 15 to 20 minutes, we do retrospective. So I have them repeat their emotions, what happened, how did they feel, what did they learn from tools, domain, language, and all of this. So, and the team members, they do the mobbing, and then they bring all the sticky notes, put it on my desk, prove that they have done retro. So, and it really depends on the teams. Some teams I need to handhold longer, and sometimes some team members are passionate about it and they reach out to me and they say, we will do it. And when they do it, it becomes a habit. And what I have seen, as they do this, there are more tendency to do pairing together, or do a quick WebEx, like on the message, let's say Slack or something. They say, oh, let's do a quick, WebEx. So 4 or 5 of them get onto WebEx and they resolve the issues and things like that, which means that they, they like it and they want to use it for solving their problems.
While you're doing all of this, did you have other maybe non-technical counterparts within the company see what you're doing? Did the style that you were using grow at all? Do you have any comment on that?
Yeah, so one of the team that I told you guys that I had an anxious person and stuff. So I got assigned to them because their code review would take 2 weeks to do a code review for each other. And after we did mobbing for 20 times, they would finish their code on the same day. And I invited other directors and engineering managers to come over and watch them. And because they were finishing each other's sentences, literally they would turn and say like let's say I'm a navigator after you, Chris, and I'm like, Chris, were you thinking to do recursive blah blah? And you're like, no, I was thinking this way. So they watched all of this, and at the end, after retro, they said, no, these guys are so high IQ, we can never replicate this. And my response was, do you remember 2-3 months ago, you guys asked me to work on this team because they were so silo and individualistic? When they see it in action, and then they have an aha moment, and then other engineering managers asked me to help them. And I try to help the Scrum Masters or other team members to come over and watch me as we are doing, with the team's permission, if they, that they allow us. And then the first once or twice, I am like co-facilitating with them. And that is how I have spread out the, this concept within the company.
That sounds awesome. Is there anything that you would say? I think those are a lot of really good strategies for influencing and growing it. Is there anything else that you would say around, just growing the practice, gaining acceptance, buy-in? A lot of the times, I think I lean a lot on my technical knowledge often to explain the benefits of mobbing. So I think it would be useful for, tips around just either getting buy-in or getting people to try it, those sorts of things. What did you say? How did you introduce it?
Yeah. So I say the first important thing for me, and I think based on my conversation with other less technical people, is that build your confidence. And that is educate yourself, read books, participate in, mobbing, and tell them that you are not a programmer. And I always mention this to everybody: attend industry virtually. On the only thing they ask is, or you ask Chris or Austin, that you need to sign an NDA. Yeah. Educate yourself as much as possible. And as I mentioned, find allies and focus on facilitation, instructions, the working agreement, timing, and monitor and observe how the teams is working. And the other thing is that emphasize on growth mindset. My goal is not to have, my goal is to have a good mobbing, not that we are going to finish that task that we have in hand. So that has helped me to, to be able to do this. The other thing is that I don't think you guys hear that, but I hear this a lot. My dev managers tell me this is a waste of time. Why am I paying 6 developers and only one person is going to sit behind the keyboard? Again, I use this for onboarding when we hire a new employee, because we want to ramp them up fast. I tell them, let's do a pairing, not talking, strong pairing, because I had paired and they talk for 1 hour, and let's have a 10-day, like 1 day a week for 10 days that we do small mobbing with 3 people, and they come up to speed quickly. Educate them, share with them the video, and ask other people that you have worked with and they like mobbing, or people that they know mobbing from other previous experiences. When the opportunity comes, to talk to that manager, so that I am not the only person that it's talking about this. And these are some of the things that helps me to introduce it to the companies. And the other thing is, be patient and don't give up. It takes time to get a buy-in, Chris, and so.
Oh yeah, I know. That's good.
Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and I'd like what you're saying about emphasizing the facilitation skills, because especially a lot of the good parts of mob programming is non-technical and is in simplest terms, basically good conversation skills, like good group conversation skills. And to put in more agile terms, it's a lot of things that are taught in Scrum Master facilitation stuff for like facilitating a stand-up or something like that. I mean, so you may not even know what people are talking about, but you can notice that someone is not chiming in, and and you can ask them like, hey, what do you think about this? Or, adopt a mobbing pattern where everyone has to weigh in, or like you said, where you notice someone was anxious, or, so you can notice a lot of the things that make for a healthy group conversation or healthy mob. A lot of it is non-technical. And so I think having those good facilitation skills, the bar is low technically, because a lot of the things are in and of themselves not technical. It could be talking about astrophysics, it could be talking about Python design patterns. It doesn't matter. The conversation's either healthy or not. One follow-up question I had was, I know the goal is not to make the non-technical facilitator technical, but have you observed that as a side effect?
Yes. And there is also another thing. As I have observed the teams, I have a passion for technical, and I miss, programming. But as I observe, my knowledge gets increased of what they are doing, and I pick up stuff. And that is very important, to pay attention, not just facilitate. And if you have passion to see like, what is the team doing? If you pay attention, you pick up stuff. And you are also seeing like, like the way that they code, and then you see improvements. Our methods or classes are just growing smaller and smaller, and then the team starts refactoring and things like that. So you can see how the team is growing. And also I feel part of the team, because now I understand what are some of their struggles and what are they doing. So I'm getting knowledge, and I'm also getting into some of the deep issues or things that the team encounters because of complexity, and I get a better view of what we are doing than being abstract. Oh yeah, my team didn't do code review, but I can understand why they are not doing a code review, because we have dependency to millions of other teams and I get familiar how complex our system is.
Nice, very good.
All right. Well, I think now is probably a good time to ask if there's anything that you'd want to promote or share before we close.
I want to say one thing. I know we talked about lots of things. I want to have a message that what is in it from doing mock programming from Scrum Master or Agile coach perspective. Why do they want to do that? Why do they want to go through all the struggles or things like that? And this is my message for them. You increase the team skills. You increase the collaboration within the team. You increase long-term velocity, which as an Agile coach or Scrum Master, that's part of your job. And the team members, they learn from each other, and your completed stories increases versus the lots of work in progress. So I have done a presentation at Agile Alliance 2023. So I'm going to share the link with Austin and Chris, with both of you guys, so you can add it to this. And also I have a GitHub with all the resources as a less technical coach, how to do pre-mobbing preparation or during mobbing and post-mobbing and things like that. I will share with both of you guys.
All right. Thank you so much. And look for those in the show notes, everyone. And to our audience, if you know maybe a Scrum Master, an Agile coach, maybe they're not technical, but they're interested in mobbing, sharing this episode with them could be just the thing that they're looking for. So I encourage you to share and like and subscribe, hit the notification bell. Thanks for listening, and we look forward to next time. And Nazee, thank you for being on the show. Bye, everybody.
Thank you very much.